Welcome to Stone Cold Stros. I'm Brandon Strange with Charlie Palullo and Josh Jordan. You can find them on X at Palullo and at JoshJordan975. And in between episodes of this show, you can read their blogs covering all things Houston sports over on our flagship site, sportsmap.com. On today's episode, as the countdown to opening day quickly winds down, we take a look at the undisputed strength of this ball club. But is it actually better than you think? And also, is Houston flying under the radar with the national outlets? It's been a while since Houston was considered the underdogs, but we're going to talk about why they may be again. And the Cam Smith spring campaign has a rival, and they're seemingly fighting for the same spot. Just a reminder to hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, click the bell for notifications so you know when new content drops. And if you're on the go, we're on all your favorite podcast apps. Just search for us by the name Stone Cold Stros. As we creep to within a couple of weeks of opening day, Charlie, the roster outside of a few wild card spots we're watching are pretty much spoken for. I think I think what's interesting is as we look at this strength of the team, it's clearly the starting rotation. I got to wondering, or got to thinking about, like, as I was reflecting on this time last season. We were talking about Framber Valdez. We were talking about Christian Javier in the starting rotation, Hunter Brown, JP France, and Ronel Blanco. We were excited to see Javier finally get the starting role as opposed to getting bounced around from the pen to the rotation. Framber was a known commodity. Hunter Brown, we had some hope for, but really hadn't seen anything extended as far as a stretch from him. JP France was nursing the shoulder injury, and his previous season had not ended well. And Ronel Blanco was a complete unknown. But then you look at this year's rotation: Valdez, Brown, Blanco, Arrighetti, Hayden Wesneski. I started to think, like, man, this rotation, I'm a little bit more bullish on it from this year's rotation compared to last. Can you make the case, Charlie, or am I off track that this rotation is better than last year's at this time?
The password is irrefutable, other than for the silly or underinformed Astro fans, observers, or national media people with whatever narratives. It's not even close. You covered some of the pertinent factors. Going into the regular season last year, the Astros had one starting pitcher that there was reason to feel rock solid about, and that was Framber Valdez, who will make his fourth consecutive opening day start next week. Right? Heading into 2024, remember, Christian Javier was not a good pitcher in 2023. Revelation in 2022, damn near unhittable down the stretch, started the World Series no-hitter. In 2023, he wasn't good in the first half. He wasn't good in the second half. His ERA for the season was over 4.50. Right? You thought, young guy, the pendulum could swing back very much in the positive direction, but it's not where it was going into 2024. Justin Verlander reacquired for the stretch drive in 2022. Then you had 2023. Well, he was on the injured list going into the regular season last year. Hunter Brown's 2023 was damn near catastrophic, right? His first month of 2024, he belonged in the minor leagues off of his performance. So heading into last season, Hunter Brown wasn't one you put in the checkmark column of, yeah, there's a good solid starter. JP France, frankly, was kind of fluky with his success in 2023 off of his entire minor league profile. So it was Framber and a whole bunch of cross your fingers. Whereas starting next week, hey, injuries fall off in performance. Obviously, it's all in play. But as we discuss, Framber, rock solid. Hunter Brown, phenomenal. Ronel Blanco, all right, it was just one season, but he was second in the damn league in earned run average. Spencer Arrighetti, a 3.18 ERA after the All-Star break last season. All right, you need more body of work, but as a number 4 starter, that's just fine. Hayden Wesneski is the biggest question mark. He has not had any legit major league success to this point. He's the number 5 starter. Let's put together the list of teams with 5 starters that you're saying, good. There's your list. So, yes, going into 2025, the starting pitching is the absolute backbone of a team that, all right, the naysayers, the doubters, those accustomed to the Astros just looking like a much stronger team overall, that's okay. But their starting rotation is why this team is at worst a tri-favorite in the AL West.
I remember last year around this time, we were just thinking about all these injuries and talking about pitchers. Maybe they should pick up. We were doing videos about, maybe go get Lorenzen and go get this guy and that guy because Dana Brown doesn't have enough starters and they're banged up. And they were. They're also felt like an older rotation last year, especially with Verlander being on there. But now there's feels like a younger rotation with more upside with Arrighetti and Hunter Brown starting to come into their own. So, and I'm kind of bullish on Wesneski. We see what happens when these guys come to the Astros and they start tinkering with our arsenal and figuring some stuff out. So, yeah, I feel a lot better about this rotation. And then you have McCullers is in a spot where it's like, hey, if he gives you anything, great. It's icing on the cake. Kind of the same with Luis Garcia. If they get going and they start contributing, awesome. But as it is right now, you feel good about the five starters. We're not doing videos about what pitchers haven't signed yet and why they need to go get those guys because we're worried about the rotation. So, yeah, I think we're in a much better spot this year.
Yeah, and there will be injury attrition, and decline is always a possibility. Could Ronel Blanco be in 2025 what Christian Javier was in 2023? Not nearly as good as he had been the prior year. In both the cases of Blanco and Brown, after blowing through their prior professional highs in innings pitched, what is the encore? Will they hold up durability and with excellence? All part of why we'll watch the season.
Indeed. And to go along with that, you've got Lance McCullers Jr. slated for his first game back on Tuesday. So if we assume that this is the beginning of his spring training and his ramp up period, then maybe he's on pace to be joining the big club, barring setbacks, maybe 3 to 4 weeks after the beginning of the season, which if you extrapolate that out, maybe based on where Luis Garcia is in his rehab, maybe he follows him an additional 2 to 3 or 4 weeks following that. So you could, in theory, again, injuries happen, regression happens, of course, but in theory, there is a world in which by the second month into the season, you have a glut of pitching, regardless of what happens with Wesneski. But maybe Wesneski's good too. We may be having conversations about who goes to the bullpen, but that's my question to you guys: is how do you see Joe Espada juggling this pitching? These starting rotation, should he end up with a glut in a best case scenario?
Well, probably closer to 2 generations ago, Darwin played a major role on the Astros pitching staff. That was Dr. Death, Danny Darwin. Now I'm talking about the old scientist guy. Survival of the fittest in both health and performance. The first 3 weeks of the season, the Astros have off days woven in that they will not need a 6th starter, right? Big chunks of this season, they're going to want to go with a 6-man rotation for preservation purposes. They won't need a 6th guy until game 18, 21, somewhere along those lines. And if you have 7 candidates for 6 spots, they're not all going to stay healthy. They're not all going to pitch well. So things will just happen of their own accord at their own pace. You cross your fingers that they're not calamitous injuries. And then there are the B-tier guys, non-significant prospects at the minor league level who could wind up getting called upon at some point. Your Ryan Gustos and AJ Blueball types. You don't want to have to dip down to there, but virtually every team does have to use a starting pitcher or two that it was thinking, yeah, that wasn't on the bingo card, part of the plan heading into the season. But going into 2025, the Astros starting rotation is an absolute strength. 1, 2, 3 off the 2024 performance is top 5 or so in all the major leagues. And you'd happily take your chances early on with Arrighetti and Wesneski 4-5.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we have to maybe put Luis Garcia in a different bucket than Lance McCullers right now, just because it feels like McCullers is quite a bit ahead of him to where he's ready to go in games where Garcia is just kind of doing bullpens. So I think maybe we kind of worry about Luis Garcia a few months down the line. Maybe if we're lucky, like you said, Brandon, we see McCullers at the end of April, early May, something like that. Whereas I got to think Luis Garcia at best is another month or so behind that. So if we just kind of put it in those terms, then you have your 5 guys. And then if McCullers comes back, are they immediately just going to let him go? Just we're going to treat him like he's any starting pitcher starting his season? Are they going to let him work up to 80, 90, 100 pitches? How soon will they do that? I'm not sure. You wonder with Wesneski, if McCullers is back, could there be a piggyback situation where early on McCullers is giving you 3 or 4 innings and then they go to Wesneski? Maybe did they do it the other way around? I don't know. It depends on how much respect they show Lance McCullers. We know that he likes to start games, but it's some good options to have. So I couldn't be more excited to actually see Lance McCullers contribute and do something for this team that looks like the velocity is where you want it to be. So I think early on, those are your 6 guys. It'll be 5 at first, and then when Lance joins, you got 6 to work in there, and then it'll play out. Things will take its course. Espada will make decisions because he has to make them. Everybody's not going to pitch well, especially early in the year. Guys sometimes have little setbacks with soft tissue injuries because they're just trying to stretch out and get to their full capacity. So, we'll play it by ear, but it's nice to have options this season.
If you're an Astros fan, naturally you look at things through an Astros tunneled perspective, but this isn't solitaire, right? You're facing competition. It's not golf where it's you against the course. Well, the most immediate competition is the American League West. Texas Rangers rotation, question marks galore. Right? Jacob deGrom, let's start there, a much richer and better version of Lance McCullers. Also always a major injury waiting to happen. John Gray takes a line drive off his wrist last week. He's gone into at least May. Cody Bradford, they were hoping to be their 5th starter. Ow, my elbow. He's nowhere close to being ready to start the season. So guys like Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter may be forced into the rotation. One-time Astros prospect Adrian Hauser went in the Carlos Gomez trade to Milwaukee. He's trying to make the Rangers team. He might wind up in their rotation to start the season. Tyler Mahle, another guy who missed almost all of last year. Soreness in his arm. Had to miss a spring training start last week. And then there are the Mariners, who definitely have the best incumbent starting pitching. Well, George Kirby's down. Inflammation in his shoulder. So he's on the IL to start the season. And you can giggle if you'd like. Look at the freaking Yankees. Garrett Cole done for the year. Luis Heel probably gone until the All-Star break. Clark Schmidt. His shoulder stiffened up over the weekend. He probably won't be ready to start the season. So, with the Astros over this near decade of pure excellence, the standard is the standard, right? The Astros measured against the Astros. Well, this isn't a team of 101, 103, 106, 107 win caliber, but that, woe is me. They're going 75 and 87. It's the inevitable demise. No, it isn't.
That's the thing that I think I find the most entertaining about some of our comments is people say, "Oh, you always sound so down on the team." And no, we're not down on the team, but what we're comparing the team to is the standard that they set. So there's a standard of excellence that this team has set that we measure them up against, for better or for worse. Now, I think even still, I think we're very positive about this team because there's a lot of things to be positive about that starting rotation. Obviously, the thing that we're highlighting to start off this conversation, and as bullish as we are on this rotation, you don't really hear about it a lot from the national media. I've watched a few things. I know, Josh, you've watched a few things, previewing the season. And it seems like, as is in the case in most sports, the national outlets put a lot of stock in names. And Houston's lost a ton of them over the season or during the offseason. And it's not just pitching. It's, Tucker and Bregman, but on pitching, Presley and Verlander. So it's understandable that some of these guys, don't watch every game of every team. So they don't get to watch as granularly as we do Bregman's historic slow start, or Tucker and Verlander spending chunks of the time on IL, or Presley having a very un-Presley-like season. So those weren't stories that they were following as closely as you or I were. And then think about Ronel Blanco and Spencer Arrighetti, not household names. And the only narrative around Hunter Brown to this point has been, he pitches like Verlander. Well, I mean, now he's definitely carved out a name for himself. I think he's much more on the, I think within the vision of, or on the board for a lot of the national outlets. And Fromber's obviously a star. But given the attrition and star power of this team, do you think Houston's actually flying under the radar for most media outlets this season?
I don't think they're being dismissed as a contender. I mean, it's not silly to pick the Rangers to win the division. If the Mariners somehow fortify their offense, it's not absurd to think the Mariners could win this division. The Astros aren't as good as we've been accustomed to seeing them, right? The decline has been 2 years now. But when you're atop Mount Everest, if you drop down a tier or two, it doesn't mean you're in the bottom on a mule in the Grand Canyon. So the nucleus of a good lineup is still here. The nucleus of an elite starting rotation is here, right? The bullpen has more questions going into a season than it's had for years. But this is still a solid ball club, so it could swing either way. Things fall right. Is there an upside of 94, 95 wins? I mean, I'd bet the under on that, but I wouldn't say, oh, no freaking chance. Now, if things go wrong, most notably the starting pitching that we talked about, could this turn out to be a 78 and 84 team? Hey, see last year's Texas Rangers. All kinds of things can happen. The Astros' floor is lower than it used to be. But we're in Houston. There is no basement.
No, I think the national media is sleeping on the Astros a little bit here. I mean, just the other day, Jim Bowden, he's a guy that former GM. He does some work with the Athletic foul territory. He thinks the Astros are going to finish third place in the division. And then we were talking about the rotation earlier. MLB out on X, they put out their list of the top 10 best pitching rotations in baseball. Astros didn't crack the list, but they had the Rangers at number 9. But there's also some other reasons to be positive about the Astros. MLB Network and Baseball America put out their top 100 players list. Both of them had 8 Astros on that list. And if we look across baseball, that's second best in all of MLB. The Braves had 9 players on the list in the top 100. The Astros and Dodgers had 8. And then below that, you drop all the way down to the Padres with 6. So clearly, if you're just looking at the players on this roster and how they stack up with other teams, the Astros have more of the top players in the top 100. Hunter Brown's now cracking that list. Jeremy Pena is now back in the top 100 after he fell out of it. So I think there's a lot to be excited about with this team. And I think they could win this division, no problem. They just have to stay healthy and live up to expectations. And finally, I'll just say this. They focus so much on Kyle Tucker leaving and Bregman leaving, but nobody talks about how Paredes could easily slip into Bregman's role and produce similar numbers. People aren't talking about Christian Walker joining the team. There's not as much about what's coming into the Astros as they like to talk about what's coming out. And that's typical, right? When you have dynasties or teams that are just really good for a long period of time, fans just naturally, they want to see them fail. It's like when the Patriots kept going to the Super Bowl every year. People are just tired of seeing it. They're ready for that to fall off and to see something new. I think that's the case with the Astros. They're so good, so consistently. Joe Schmo, general MLB fan, is just sick of them, and they're sick of them because they've been successful. They've been winning.
Josh, you mentioned Christian Walker. He looks like he'll be back into games soon as he rehabs that sore oblique. There's a world in which he could be ready for opening day, but I think just given his history with this injury and the fact that I assume they're going to give him every opportunity to be very, very, very comfortable when he makes his debut with Houston. I wouldn't be surprised if if he misses the first week or two of the season. But do not fret, because I'm looking forward to him probably above all else. Cam Smith notwithstanding, but as far as the guys who are definitely on the opening day roster or definitely projected out to be on the big roster, I'm looking forward to him the most and seeing what he does in an Astros uni. Just a quick message. If you're interested in advertising your service or product on this show, you can contact our friends over on the sales team at houston.sportsmap.com/advertise. The link's in the description. So, popular topic we've been talking about for several weeks now, the Cam Smith Grapefruit League campaign marches on. I mean, guys just having an incredible breakout Grapefruit League debut for the Astros. It is the Grapefruit League, so obviously that is the biggest caveat. But, look, we have to talk about it, though, because he really is showing something, especially now that you're going to see competition stiffen up as we wind down in these last 2 weeks of Grapefruit League. He's going to see more and more major league pitching, and he's going to get more and more opportunities to play right field. So all eyes are going to be on this right field position because we've had Dana Brown say that he challenged Smith to compete for that right field position. Chas McCormick's looking to regain form and carve out a place for himself permanently in that position. Then Zach DeZenzo has come out of nowhere and put up really good numbers this spring as well. So I kind of wonder what you guys think as far as like, what are you betting on to happen first, or what would you bet on to happen first? That Cam Smith forces his way up onto the big club, Chas McCormick regains his form as a major leaguer, and then also where does DeZenzo fit in this equation? Because it seems like now they all kind of are blocking each other at that position.
Yeah, I would bet against 2023 Chas McCormick reemerging. I think that will go down as his quote-unquote career year, and it was a fabulous season. I mean, you'd think by accident he'd be better than he was in 2024, but he could be better than he was in 2024 and still not belong in a big league lineup. The one other name I would put in the mix, if he makes the team, and if Christian Walker does start the season on the IL, it does buy a little time on this decision-making. McCormick's going to get first crack at the right field job. Ben Gamel is on the team. Gamel is the left-handed hitter. He's a journeyman. So you're not thinking, well, if McCormick can't cut it, hey, give Gamel an everyday shot. Right? He was part of the desperation duo with Jason Hayward last season. But if you siphon some playing time from McCormick, that you're not in the lineup every day against right-handed pitching, Gamel's going to get some at-bats. But between the two of them, if you're just not getting enough, and Cam Smith is pounding on the door, be it at AA Corpus or AAA Sugarland, wherever they choose to slot him. I mean, hey, let's get on with it. DeZenzo's another guy who hadn't played much outfield, but what if he swings the bat? But if Walker is ready to go, right, and Espada is thinking he will be, but it's the Astros, as you noted, Brandon. If he's on the IL, wow, what a stunner. But if he is here, there are 10 absolutes among the 13 non-pitchers for the opening day roster, right? The 9 guys that we'll call their starting lineup, and I'm putting Dubon at second base there. And then you have Victor Caratini. So for the 3 remaining spots, if we're including Cam Smith in the mix, you have him, you have DeCenzo, you have Brendan Rodgers, you have Gamel, and is that everybody? Oh, John Singleton. So only 3 of those 5 can make the team. Are you really going to carry John Singleton for the hope of a lucky left-handed pinch homer here and there if you have other first base options beyond Walker? But Cam Smith, who in the small number of at-bats has been so fabulous against mostly minor league pitching. Well, Sunday against a legit major league pitcher who the Astros could see in the opening series against the Mets, Tyler McGill. The way the ball just jumps off Smith's bat and right field corner, 340-foot home run. That would have flown right over the right field corner wall at Daikin Park. My guess 10 days out from the opener is that Cam Smith will start in the minor leagues, but maybe he's just a few games away more of excellence, along with Chas McCormick continuing to stink like rotten eggs from them saying, let's go Cam Smith. And you know what? If they go with him and he starts the season 2 for 29, you could send him to the minors. If it just verifies that, yeah, he does need a little more seasoning and give him some more time also to learn the outfield, that won't be some crushing disappointment. And actually, if a little bit of major league failure did put Cam Smith's dauber so far down, and hey, kid, he wouldn't wind up making it big anyway. So if you want to dare to be great and go with Cam Smith as your opening day right fielder, I don't mind it at all. I'd still bet against that being the way they go. Because if Cam Smith is here, he's in the lineup every day.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's the challenge for Cam is not just trying to make it in the big league, swinging the bat, but learning a brand new position at the same time. That's a lot to put on a guy. And also, we talked about this last week. It makes you wonder with Dana Brown, if I was challenging him in January to play right field, why the hell did it take it so long to get him to start taking some reps out in the outfield? Makes no sense. It makes me wonder how accurate that report is, or if he didn't even mention right field. Maybe he just challenged him. I don't know. It's a head scratcher. But we know this. Dana Brown just says stuff. So that could be part of it too. But just from what I'm hearing from Joe Espada, Chandler Rome had this quote the other day. He was talking about McCormick. I'm looking beyond the stats when it comes to McCormick, when it comes to Chaz. And you better be looking beyond the stats. He's hitting 167. Now, Espada did say that, hey, he's swinging at strikes. He's taking walks. He's hitting some balls hard. So that's the stuff that we're worried about. That's what we look for. So they're just telling you without telling you that Chaz is going to get a crack at this, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I think DeZenzo's really making some noise. He's a guy that, of course, we're all excited about Cam Smith. But if DeZenzo could also be a plus young player coming up, and you can use him all over the field. You can play him at first base. You can play him in the outfield. He could be a really important piece. He's hitting 371 this spring, and we've at least seen him play in the big leagues a little bit before last year, had that big home run in Boston, but then kind of struggled after that with any consistency. So we'll see, but I think it's looking like they're going to give Chaz about a month to figure this thing out. And they talked about the short leash on him, so they don't come out and say that if it's not true. And Espada's already defending his poor stats this spring. So, yeah, and that's going to be a lot of pressure on Chaz. He's already not hitting well. And if he comes out and he knows if he's not good for the first 3 weeks of the season, that might be it. They might pull the plug on him.
Was it Teddy Roosevelt? If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Chaz, if you can't take the heat, get out of the lineup. And one more nugget for those all on board the campaign. Right, we've discussed on more than one occasion, those who are ultimately going to be studs, they're in the big leagues a very high percentage of the time at age 22 that Cam Smith turned a couple of weeks ago. 34 years ago. Egads. 34 years ago. Jeff Bagwell had no first base experience, but Ken Caminetti was entrenched as a third baseman. And the Astros said, man, this guy, all he does is hit. All he does is hit. He'll learn first base on the fly. Now, they did give him the full Major League spring training to learn first base, and then said in 1991, okay, Jeff Bagwell, you're our guy. Of course, the 1991 Astros were awful. So it was, if you lost an extra game or two because Bagwell was futzing around at first base, no biggie. Whereas when you add them up, if you're in a close race, and inexperienced Cam Smith in right field and inexperienced Jose Altuve in left field, and if it's costing you a couple of games, it could come back and bite you at the end. But if you're all for Cam now, Cam forever, Bagwell, 34 years ago, no experience the prior season or before that at first base, worked out okay with him.
I mean, if there's one thing I can say in defense of Chaz at this point is he has worked 9 walks this spring. So there's definitely, you can tell that they're working on with him about being patient at the plate. Now, granted, that's not going to necessarily equate to the same numbers once you get the season started, but perhaps this is just about, getting in some good habits in the spring that they hope carry over into the season. However, he's not going to be, I think his leash is even shorter now. We knew it was going to be short, or at least we thought so. But if he's got Cam Smith and DeZenzo that are mashing in the minors, that are pushing their way up onto the big club, I just think it's that much worse for Chaz. He's either going to have to step up and show some stuff early, or the Chaz McCormick time in Houston could be drawing to a close. Final thoughts, guys.
A career arc, Chaz McCormick, in 3 words. 2022, champ. Yep. 2023, chump. 2024, chump. What will be the word for 2025? I think champ and chimp are off the table.
I believe Chaz does have some options left, though. So I think the Astros have a little flexibility if they need to move some guys around as the season goes along.
Indeed, he does. And indeed, they do. So we'll see how Chaz steps up and answers the call, because right now it seems to be a very, very pivotal point in his major league career with this team. That's going to be it for this episode of Stone Cold Stros. Just one last reminder that if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't yet, be sure to click like on the video. And if you listen on podcasts and apps like Apple or Spotify, please consider giving us a 5-star rating. Let us know in the comments what you're looking forward to, or any reactions that you have to our thoughts on the season. And our next episode is going to drop on Thursday, so make sure you're subscribed to this channel, Sports Map Houston, or our other channel, Sports Map Texans. We drop bonus episodes as news breaks. Thanks for listening. For Charlie and Josh, I'm Brandon saying, until next time, go Stros.